The Sicilian Cosa Nostra. Sicily, early 1980s. The Cosa Nostra was an empire that controlled the heroin trade between Europe and the United States and murdered judges, prosecutors, and police officers in broad daylight on the streets. More than 1,000 people were killed during the Second Mafia War alone, which took place from 1981 to 1983. The turning point came when boss Tommaso Buscetta agreed to talk. He was interrogated by a young judge, Giovanni Falcone. For the first time, a mafioso from within revealed the structure of the cupola, the governing commission of the Cosa Nostra. Based on this testimony, Falcone and his colleague Paolo Borsellino prepared an 607-page indictment. On February 10, 1986, the Maxi trial, the largest-scale trial against the mafia in history, began in Palermo. There were 475 people in the dock. A bunker-style courtroom was built specifically for the trial inside the Ucordoni prison. Concrete walls, 30 steel cages along the perimeter, and protection against missile strikes. The hearings lasted 22 months. In December 1987, 360 guilty verdicts were handed down, with a total sentence of over 2,600 years in prison. The mafia did not forgive him. On May 23, 1992, 500 kilograms of explosives were planted under the highway near Capaci. Falcone's motorcade was blown to pieces. The judge, his wife, and 3 bodyguards were killed. 57 days later, a similar explosion on D'Amelio Street in Palermo killed Borsellino and 5 of his escorts. But the judge's deaths set the countdown in motion. By 1993, the boss of bosses, Toto Riina, had been arrested. The Maxi trial went down in history as the moment when the state defeated the Cosa Nostra in court for the first time. Yakuza. Imagine a mafia with offices in the city center, a corporate magazine, and business cards. It is the most unusual criminal organization in the world. Unlike the Italian mafia or drug cartels, the Yakuza has operated openly for decades. The largest syndicates, the Yamaguchi Gumi, Sumiyoshi Kai, and Inagawa Kai, are officially recognized by the Japanese police as designated Boryokudan. They have headquarters with signs on the doors. The Yamaguchi Gumi even published an internal magazine, the Yamaguchi Gumi Shimpo, featuring articles, poems, and a column by the boss. The most famous tradition is yubitsume. For a serious offense or as a sign of atonement, a clan member cuts off the tip of their little finger and presents it to the boss, wrapped in cloth. The ritual's roots go back to the samurai era. A shortened finger weakened the grip on a sword, making the warrior dependent on the group. Today, the absence of phalanges reveals the entire biography of a yakuza. The second symbol is full-body tattoos, known as irizumi. They are applied by hand using bamboo needles, and the process can take years and cost tens of thousands of dollars. Dragons, carp, demons, every design carries meaning. Because of this tradition, it is still forbidden in Japan to appear with tattoos in public baths, swimming pools, and gyms. The most surprising fact about the Yakuza is that after the earthquake and tsunami on March 11, 2011, the Yakuza were among the first to arrive in the disaster zone. They opened their offices to the victims, distributing food, water, blankets, and diapers, while government aid was still being organized. Trucks carrying humanitarian aid traveled to Tohoku without any identifying markings, but both Japanese and Western journalists documented the event. The Yakuza is the only mafia in the world that cannot be compared to any other. The Ndrangheta, the richest mafia on the planet. The most powerful criminal organization in the world is neither the Cosa Nostra nor the Yakuza. It is the Ndrangheta. It originated in the late 19th century in Calabria, a poor region at the toe of the Italian boot. For many decades, it was considered the younger brother of the Sicilian Mafia. Today, according to estimates by Italian investigators and Europol, the Ndrangheta's annual turnover is around 50–60 billion euros, comparable to the GDP of small countries. According to data from the Italian Anti-Mafia Directorate and a Europol report, the Ndrangheta controls up to 70–80% of the cocaine flow entering Europe. They negotiate directly with Colombian and Mexican cartels, and the port of Gioia Tauro in Calabria has become the continent's main gateway for drug trafficking. The main secret is its structure. Unlike the Sicilian Mafia, where it was possible to recruit a member, the Ndrangheta is built on blood ties. The basic unit, the Ndrina, is literally a single family: brother, father, cousin, son-in-law. To betray the organization, one must betray one's own mother. That is precisely why, throughout its history, the number of pentiti, repentant informants, within the Ndrangheta is far smaller than that of the Cosa Nostra. It is virtually impossible to infiltrate the organization as an undercover agent. You are either born into the family, or you remain an outsider forever. Today, their cells operate in Germany, Canada, Australia, Switzerland, and the Netherlands. The world learned of them in 2007 after a massacre in Duisburg, Germany, when 6 people were shot outside a restaurant, the result of a vendetta between 2 clans. The Medellin Cartel, Pablo Escobar. Colombia, 1980s. One man controlled 80% of the global cocaine market and earned more than some countries. His name was Pablo Escobar. At its peak, the Medellin Cartel generated about $420 million a week, roughly $22 billion a year. Up to 15 tons of cocaine were shipped to the U.S. daily. According to Forbes, in 1989, Escobar joined the list of billionaires with a fortune of $25 billion, ranking 7th in the world. There was so much money that the accounting department wrote off about 10% of the cash each year. It was eaten by rats, damaged by moisture, or simply lost in warehouses. According to the recollections of his brother Roberto, a former cartel accountant, about $2,500 a month was spent just on rubber bands to tie up the stacks of bills. And once, while hiding from the special services in the mountains, Escobar burned about $2 million in cash, simply to warm his daughter Manuela, who had fallen ill from the cold. In 1982, he became a member of the Colombian Congress and proposed an incredible deal to the authorities. He would personally pay off the country's entire foreign debt, amounting to about $10 billion. In exchange, he demanded that extradition to the United States be abolished. The government refused. Then the war began. Bombings, murders of judges, ministers, and more than 500 police officers. On December 2, 1993, the day after his 44th birthday, Escobar was shot dead on the roof of a house in Medellin. The Russian Mafia. In 1994, the FBI officially recognized the Russian Mafia as one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. But it all began much earlier and was far more terrifying than what is portrayed in the movies. After the collapse of the USSR in 1991, the country plunged into chaos. Factories stood idle, wages went unpaid, and thousands of former athletes, Afghan war veterans, and intelligence agents took to the streets. It was they who became the foundation of what the world came to know as the Bratva. Unlike the Italian Mafia, with its strict hierarchy, Russian organized crime in the 1990s was decentralized. The main force was the Solntsevskaya gang, founded in the late 1980s by Sergei Mikhail. According to intelligence estimates, it comprised up to 9,000 members, and its interests extended from Moscow to Miami and Tel Aviv. A notable figure is Vyacheslav Ivankov, known as Yaponchik, a classic old-school thief-in-law. He was sent to the United States in the early 1990s, where, according to the FBI, he coordinated the activities of Russian-speaking criminal gangs in Brighton Beach. He was arrested in 1995, deported to Russia, and in 2009 was shot by a sniper in central Moscow. A distinctive feature of the Russian Mafia is its personnel. Among the enforcers were many former Special Forces soldiers, wrestlers, and boxers. They didn't need training, they already knew how to kill. And, of course, tattoos. In the criminal tradition, a tattoo served as a kind of resume. Stars on the shoulders signified the status of a thief-in-law. Domes on the chest indicated the number of prison terms served. And rings on the fingers revealed criminal records and specializations. A fake tattoo could cost you your life. By the late 1990s, tens of thousands of people had died in criminal wars. And the scariest thing is that the Russian Mafia didn't disappear. It just put on suits and moved into offices. Murder. New York, 1930s. There is a syndicate operating in the country that doesn't trade, provide protection, or launder money. Its only product is death. Murder is a name coined by journalists. In reality, it was a group of hired killers from Brownsville and East New York who carried out contracts for the National Crime Syndicate, founded by Lucky Luciano and Mir Lansky in the early 1930s. The core of the group consisted of Jewish and Italian gangsters. According to investigators' estimates, over the course of a decade they carried out between 400 and 1,000 contract killings across the United States. The operational leader was Albert Anastasia, the supreme executioner, the man who personally gave orders for eliminations. Louis Lepke Buchalter was considered the strategic leader, the only mafia boss in U.S. history to be executed by court order. He was sent to the electric chair at Sing Sing prison on March 4, 1944. The rule was ironclad. No personal motives, no emotions, just business. Victims were killed with an ice pick, a noose, or a gun. The method depended on the circumstances. The bodies were often buried in vacant lots in Brooklyn. The killers received a fixed salary plus bonuses for each job completed. The empire collapsed because of one man, Abe Kid Twist Reles. Arrested in 1940, he began testifying and turned in dozens of killers. On November 12, 1941, Reles fell from a hotel window in Coney Island while under the guard of 6 police officers. He was nicknamed the canary who could sing but couldn't fly. This saved Anastasius, but not for long. In 1957, he was shot in the barber's chair at the Park Sheraton Hotel. Peaky Blinders. Birmingham. The 1880s. The industrial city is choking on factory smoke. In the slums of the Small Heath district, a street gang is forming, young men from working-class families who have nothing to lose. They engaged in street muggings and theft, ran illegal betting rings, and fought turf wars with other gangs, such as the Cheapside Sloggers. Now, about the legend of razor blades and cap brims. Historian Carl Chin, who has studied the gang for decades, claims this is a myth. Razor blades at the turn of the century were expensive and fragile. An ordinary worker wouldn't risk ruining his cap with such a costly tool. The TV series features charismatic gangsters, whiskey, and political intrigue. In reality, there were teenagers aged 12 to 19, poverty, rickets, and tuberculosis. There was no Shelby. Among the real-life members, historians name Thomas Gilbert, David Taylor, who was arrested with a weapon at age 13, and Harry Fowles. Their weapons were belts with heavy buckles, knives, and brass knuckles. By the early 1910s, the Peaky Blinders had been supplanted by a larger gang, the Birmingham Boys led by Billy Kimber. It was Kimber who became the prototype for one of the show's characters, the Los Zetas Cartel. If ordinary cartels are businessmen with machine guns, then Los Zetas is an army that decided to get into the drug trade. And it was they who rewrote the rules of the game in Mexico, with blood. Los Zetas emerged in the late 1990s. Their founder is Arturo Guzman de Sena, a former lieutenant in the Mexican Army's Elite Special Forces Unit GAFE, trained, among other things, in counterinsurgency tactics. He deserted and gathered about 30 former Special Forces soldiers to become the armed wing of the Gulf Cartel. It was the Zetas who first brought military discipline to drug trafficking. Ambushes, reconnaissance, heavy weaponry, machine guns, grenade launchers, armored SUVs. They recruited former soldiers from Mexico and Guatemala, including the Caibiles, the Guatemalan Special Forces. In 2010, the group split from the Gulf Cartel and unleashed one of the bloodiest wars in Mexican history. The Zetas turned terror into a marketing tool. In August 2010, at a ranch in San Fernando, they shot 72 migrants who refused to work for the cartel. In 2011, mass graves containing nearly 200 bodies were discovered there. That same year in Monterrey, militants set fire to the Royale Casino, killing 52 people. The videos of torture they posted online changed the very perception of the cartel's brutality. By the mid-2010s, following the killings and arrests of their leaders, Lazcano in 2012 and Trevino Morales in 2013, the cartel split into factions. But their legacy remained. After Los Zetas, drug cartels in Mexico ceased to be mere criminal syndicates. They became paramilitary armies. And today's war in Mexico is largely their doing. The Albanian Mafia. They answer to no state, no police, not even a Don. They answer to a book that is over 500 years old. At the heart of their culture lies the Kanun, a code of oral laws codified by Prince Leka Dukagjini back in the 15th century. The Kanun governs everything: family, property, hospitality, and, most importantly, honor. The key principle is Gyak Maria, blood vengeance. If a clan's honor is tarnished, the blood debt passes from father to son, from brother to brother. According to Albanian human rights activists, as recently as the 2010, hundreds of families lived in isolation, hiding from vendettas that had dragged on for generations. After the fall of the communist regime in 1991 and the war in Kosovo, Albanian clans, known as FIS, flooded into Western Europe. Unlike the Italians, they have no single umbrella organization. Their structure is built on blood and kinship, making it nearly impenetrable to undercover agents. By 2010, Albanians had taken control of key heroin routes through the Balkans and established direct links with Colombian cartels. According to reports from Europol and the UK's NCA, Albanian groups now dominate the wholesale cocaine market in the UK and the Benelux countries. Albanians are known for their extreme brutality, their code of silence, the bisa, and their willingness to kill to restore honor. A 500-year-old code governs the flow of billions of dollars worth of drugs in the 21st century. This is the phenomenon of the Albanian Mafia, where ancient honor meets modern crime. Bugsy Siegel. Las Vegas, the neon capital of the world. Billions of dollars, casinos, shows. But few people know that it all began with one man, a Jewish gangster named Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. Siegel was born in 1906 in Brooklyn, to a poor Jewish family from the Russian Empire. By his teenage years, he had already formed a gang with Meyer Lansky. Later, they became key figures in the Murder, a squad of hired killers working for the National Crime Syndicate. According to various estimates, this organization was responsible for dozens of contract killings. He hated the nickname Bugsy, which means crazy. It could get you shot. In the late 1930s, Siegel was sent to the West Coast to set up a racket in California. There he became a socialite. He was friends with actor George Raft and dined with Cary Grant and Clark Gable. Handsome, charismatic, and always impeccably dressed, he was the complete opposite of the stereotypical street thug. In 1946, Siegel invested in the construction of the Flamingo Hotel Casino in what was then still a desert town, Las Vegas. The budget ballooned from $1 million to $6 million. The Mafia suspected that Bugsy and his girlfriend Virginia Hill were embezzling money and transferring it to Swiss banks. The grand opening in December 1946 was a failure. The casino was losing money. On June 20, 1947, at Virginia Hill's home in Beverly Hills, Siegel was shot through the living room window with an M1 carbine. 4 bullets hit their mark, 2 of them in the head. The murder remains unsolved to this day. 20 minutes after his death, Lansky's men entered the Flamingo and took control. And Las Vegas, which Siegel was the first to envision, grew into a multi-billion-dollar empire. Banda della Magliana. Rome, late 1970s. A gang emerges in the city that, over the course of 15 years, will bring together the Mafia, the Vatican, the Secret Services, and a Masonic lodge. The gang was formed in 1977 in Rome's Magliana district. They started with kidnappings for ransom, but quickly monopolized drug trafficking, gambling, and racketeering in the capital. By the early 1980s, they effectively controlled Rome's underworld, working in tandem with the Cosa Nostra, the Camorra, and the Ndrangheta. The gang's uniqueness lay in its connections. The investigation uncovered ties to the P2 Masonic Lodge, the neo-fascist terrorists of the NAR, and the Italian intelligence agency SISD. They were accused of involvement in the 1980 bombing at the Bologna train station and the 1979 murder of journalist Mino Pecorelli. In 1982, Roberto Calvi, the God's banker and head of Banco Ambrosiano, which was linked to the Vatican Bank, was found hanged in London. The investigation later concluded that it was a murder, and members of the Banda della Magliana were suspected, as Calvi owed them large sums of laundered money. 1983. 15-year-old Emanuela Orlandi, the daughter of a Vatican employee, disappears in Rome. According to the testimony of a former girlfriend of gang leader Enrico De Patis, the girl was kidnapped by members of the Magia, presumably as a means of pressuring the Vatican over Banco Ambrosiano's debts. De Patis himself was buried in the Basilica of Sant'Apollinare, an unprecedented honor for a mafioso, which raised even more questions. There is a theory that the sudden death of Pope John Paul I in 1978, just 33 days after his election, was linked to his intention to investigate the Vatican Bank's finances. There is no evidence, but the name Banda della Magliana comes up here as well. By the early 1990s, the gang had been decimated by arrests and internal strife. The Camorra. This true monster of Italian organized crime was born in Naples as far back as the late 18th century, and its name is the Camorra. Unlike the Sicilian Mafia with its rigid hierarchy and boss of bosses, the Camorra differently. It is not a pyramid, it is a network. Dozens of autonomous clans, about 100 factions, and thousands of soldiers operating in parallel. Take out one boss, and 5 will take his place. That is precisely why the Camorra cannot be decapitated. It can only be cut into pieces, over decades. Drugs, counterfeit goods, racketeering, and gambling form the foundation. But the Camorra's true gold mine is trash. Since the 1990s, the clans, primarily the Casalesi, have turned waste disposal into a multi-billion-dollar business. Industrial toxic waste from all over Italy and even from abroad was brought to Campania and buried in fields, burned at night, or dumped into quarries. The region between Naples and Caserta has been dubbed Terra dei Fuochi, land of fires. At night, bonfires of toxic waste burn there. Scientists and prosecutors link this to a sharp rise in cancer cases among local residents. Journalist Roberto Saviano, author of the book Gomorrah, has been living under state protection since 2006. The Camorra sentenced him to death for exposing this system. Sinaloa Cartel, El Chapo. A man whose name was known throughout Mexico. A drug lord who escaped from maximum security prisons not once, but twice. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. El Chapo, which translates to Shorty, stands just 168 centimeters tall. But it was he who turned the Sinaloa cartel into the world's largest drug empire. According to the DEA, his organization controlled the supply of cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine to dozens of countries. Forbes included Guzman on its list of the world's most influential people for 8 consecutive years. 2001, Puente Grande Maximum Security Prison. According to the official account, El Chapo left his cell in a laundry cart, which was taken out by a bribed guard. Dozens of staff members had been bribed. He spent 13 years on the run. 2015, Altiplano Prison. El Chapo walks into the shower and vanishes. Beneath the floor of his cell, authorities discovered a 1.5-kilometer-long tunnel, 10 meters underground, equipped with ventilation, lighting, and a motorcycle mounted on rails, an engineering marvel of the criminal underworld. But his vanity was his downfall. A few months after his escape, he secretly met with actor Sean Penn for an interview with Rolling Stone magazine. Mexican intelligence tracked his contacts, and in January 2016 he was captured. Today, El Chapo is serving a life sentence at the U.S. Prison ADX Florence. No one has ever escaped from there. The Black Hand. New York, early 1900s. Frightening letters began appearing in the mailboxes of Italian immigrants. At the bottom was a black handprint and the signature. La Mano Nera. Pay up or die. It was not a single organization, as many believe, but rather a widespread practice of extortion. It was brought over by immigrants from Sicily and Naples, where a similar method, the baratella, had been used as early as the 19th century. In America, it flourished in neighborhoods like Little Italy, where hundreds of thousands of immigrants lived who distrusted the police and spoke almost no English. The scheme was simple and brutal. The victim, usually a successful merchant or craftsman, would receive a letter demanding a sum of money. Refusal meant the explosion of their shop, the kidnapping of a child, or a knife in the back. Among the victims was even the legendary tenor Enrico Caruso. He was demanded $2,000, and, according to rumors, he paid. The Black Hand's main enemy was New York City Police Lieutenant Giuseppe Joe Petrosino. Of Italian descent, he created the NYPD's first-ever Italian squad, a group of detectives who spoke the Sicilian dialect and worked undercover in their own neighborhoods. Petrosino deported hundreds of criminals and personally solved dozens of extortion cases. In 1909, he traveled to Palermo to obtain documents on Sicilian mafiosi living in the United States. On March 12, in Piazza Marina, he was shot dead in broad daylight. The killers were never found. Petrosino became the first and only New York City police officer to die abroad while on duty.